So another paper we read with your name on it, the experience of having a partner in prison. So a lot of people in here, or most of the people watching this is in prison, because we're doing it specifically for the prison. But they might not think about what it's like for their partner being in the community. Or maybe they know people that's not their partners, they might be friends or sisters that have a loved one in prison, but they mightn't understand from their perspective what it's like. But what kind of issues do you think was cropping up for those that had a loved one in prison? Well,
I suppose the first thing was whether they were parents or not. So if they were parents and their partner went in, now you're parenting on your own. And then you might have children who were upset and then trying to explain that to them. And then some people, decide that they're not going to tell the children, where the partner is gone. So they might say that they're gone away for work. So then they're worried about if they're going to get, if the kids might find out from someone else, if the school might find out. So trying to kind of manage a lot of secrets.
Because a lot of the time the kids are told Daddy's at work. He's working in Dubai or he's in England.
Yeah. And then but the children then might want to go and, sometimes are brought to visit.
Yeah.
So there's that whole thing of what are we going to say? Who are we going to say it to? And how are we going to say it? Or are we going to keep it, as quiet as we can? So a bit of stigma and a bit of shame as well then, about having somebody who's in prison.
I remember when we used to visit my dad in Cork prison years ago when I was about 12, 13, 14. But when you're in prison you get a number and you're a number. And when they're calling the prisoners, they call him not by his name, by his number. And my mum, every time without fail, would start arguing with the officer in the visits. He's not a number, he's a husband, he's a father. Don't dehumanise him, they're not numbers. And I used to be saying, Mum, just let it go. But when I look back now, I think, fair play to her. But some people, it is stigmatising, but just because you have a loved one in prison, it's no reflection on you.
But it can be very isolating as well, because if you have somebody that's in prison and your family don't approve of it, and you're relying on your family or your friends for support, it can be, I would imagine, it's a very difficult time.
You might even have to hide the fact that you're visiting them.
Exactly, it's
that came up as well about, for some people, if their partner does go to prison and the family might say, well, that person isn't good enough, and if you continue to support them, then you become even more isolated then. And then if you're in custody, every day is the same. There's a lot of routine.
Yeah.
And in the outside world, there is none.
Life goes on.
And sometimes unpredictable things can happen. So if you have children, the kids might get sick, or, there's always a note home from school for something, a $5 for this and a $10 for that, and there's a trip on here and thing. So they're kind of constantly managing everything. And then, you're not allowed to manage anything when you're in custody. Nothing. You've no decision. You can't make any decisions. Everything is taken away. But the person on the outside is still having to do all of that decision making and all of that organising, and then they might be doing stuff for you as well.
Yeah. A lot of the time they're sending in money, they're buying new tracksuits, and that has a huge impact on the family that's outside that's probably already struggling.
Yeah. So financially, so there's that role transition as well. So if the parent that's gone into custody was the one who was kind of better at keeping often in a house you'd have kind of the soft one, and then you have the one that'd say, well, pick up your shoes, and then
good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop. So if bad cop is gone inside, then are the kids doing what they're told? Are they pushing buttons? But also then that's down on top of the fact that they might be upset because things are different and they might be a bit confused. So, and there's nobody coming in when you're on the outside. There's nobody making your meals or, doing your laundry or anything like that. It's like all of that stuff continues. But now you have to worry then about the person inside. And
if your kid is missing his dad or his mum and they're acting up in school, the parent that's left in the community looking after them, they have to deal with the school, they have to deal with the kid. And a lot of that is hidden as well.
Yeah.
Like where they're dealing with emails or letters or phone calls from the principal, and they're not going to be telling their family about that because they feel like that, they should be on top of it, you know what I mean?
And sometimes as well, they don't always tell the person who's inside.
I was
either.
literally just thinking of that. You know, when you have phone calls or you're on the visit or you're writing letters, you're not given the full picture of what's
Everything
happening.
is grand,
Because
like-
you don't, first of all, you don't want to be worrying them because they're inside, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
And also there's that, like with the phone calls, you know, there's somebody listening on the other end, the letters are being read when they go in. So there's the person on the outside is losing that piece of support as well with their partner, and it could have been a very supportive relationship before that person got incarcerated.
It can be stressful as well for the person that's left in the community to organise visits. Sometimes they're travelling around the country if they feel like a responsibility to bring the kids around, and dealing with officers going into the new prisons and stuff like that. That can be triggering for them as well, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, we there's a good few times as well where, you know, people walking past a drugs dog, but they might have walked past somebody who's, you know, smoking cannabis outside the prison, but they haven't actually done it themselves. And then, you know, that's on them, and then the dog picks up a detection, and then they feel like they've done something wrong, and they're under the spotlight and they're being watched. And
they're mortified. They're standing there full of shame, even though they've done like nothing wrong.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that was kind of like carrying some shame that I've done something wrong when I haven't. And that relationships are, I think it's in it, is that relationships are frayed. They're not fractured, they're frayed. But that thing that you said there, Gillian, but like, you know, if you ring and they say how things, you know, everything's great, everything's grand, because you don't want to be upsetting people, you don't want to be worrying people. And then the person on the other end of the phone might know by you that there's something wrong. And then that thing about stress, they start going, oh my God, and imagining something else that's happening when it's not happening at all. You know, they've just, one of the kids has had a bit of a meltdown and they didn't want to tell you because they don't want to be upsetting you, but you feel like they're hiding something, and then you're putting two and two.
And then the head goes off.
Head goes off because you've nothing else to do, I think.
Yeah.
So then you have 2 and 2.
And you might make the mistake then of sending it to one of the lads on the landing, and then he's filling your head now with ideas that you shouldn't be thinking about. She's out doing this.
Yeah, and they're not, because they don't have time. But that thing of stress, making your head go 100 miles an hour and imagining things and finding evidence, then you think something and then you find the evidence for it, and it's not at all like, but your head has just gone 100 miles an hour.
There was in the paper as well, there was silver linings, and I think about my mother. Some partners find liberation when the partner goes to prison, or they find that they can pursue things that they maybe weren't able to when the other person was there. But when my dad was in prison, after a while my mother ended up going back into education, and my dad did in prison as well. But for some people it can be a break that they need to just be able to, maybe if the person that went into prison, there was a lot of chaos surrounding that person, and now that person is out of the house.
And they're safe.
Yeah, and all of a sudden now there's a bit of calm in the house and a bit of perspective.
And sometimes people can, when they're inside, if they see somebody and they say, oh, they're glad I'm here. And it's exactly what you've just said, they are. Because when they put their head on their pillow tonight, especially if somebody's been using drugs or they've, putting themselves in dangerous situations, that person that loves you is at home and they're saying, I know that they're safe tonight, and I know that they're going to wake up in the morning and they'll be alive. But then if you're inside, you might think it's that they're glad that you're there, but actually no, they're just glad that you're not dead. Especially if there's addiction involved, that kind of not knowing where you are, if you're going to be okay, who's going to come to the door, what kind of trouble are you in today, that just, they're okay. And then that means then, that they can start to say, well, this is how I'd like it to be better or different. And then if they can do that, that will help you do that too.
It can even improve relationships, really, if the person is taken out of, let's say if the person is in a mad lifestyle and they go into prison on remand for something or for sentenced. That might be, and then they're having conversations with their partner on the phone on a visit. That might be the first time they're actually having coherent conversations where they're sober, there's no chaos. And that can actually be good for a relationship as well,
Yeah, and it's just really important that people remember that when you're detoxing from drugs that you can get paranoid. When you spend lots of time on your own, you can get paranoid. All of those, that when a thought comes into your head, it does not mean that it is real.
Yeah.
So if somebody seems happy that you're there, they're just happy you're not dead. Sometimes is the answer.
Yeah, you think that they're out there having a great life, but a lot of the time as well,
they're not. If there's kids,
and they're struggling financially now because they don't have the extra payment that was coming into the house, and it can be very tough.
and lonely as well if
Very
people
lonely, yeah.
are, you know, being judgmental about the fact that they have somebody in prison.
Yeah, so hopefully people watching this have more of an understanding and compassion for the people that love them in the community. So thanks for that, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.